Hello, my name is Robert Larson. I'm an attorney and I'm also the owner of the Larson Law Office here in Mesa, Arizona. I focus on family law, estate planning, and personal injury. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about legal decision making in the family law area. And a lot of times we hear people talk about legal decision making a lot, and it's one of the most litigated issues when it comes to either a divorce with children or a custody case. But a lot of times people don't really understand what it means and what it doesn't mean. So, legal decision making involves the right to make decisions for your children, of course, and these are major decisions. So, that includes things like education, medical care, personal care, religious upbringing, and things like that. And a judge has essentially three options when um, when that issue is brought before them. One is they can give the decision-making rights to both parents, which would be called joint legal decision-making. A second option would be sole legal decision-making, which means one parent gets the right to make the decisions and the other parent doesn't. And there's kind of a hybrid where the judge will say you have joint legal decision-making authority, but if there's an issue that you just absolutely cannot agree on and you've tried, you've made a good faith effort, then one parent or the other is going to get to have the right to make that final decision. And it could be across the board or it could be for one specific issue. So, for example, the judge could say you have joint legal decision making in general, but on education, the mother or the father will have the right to make the final decision if you can't come to an agreement. And that would basically mean that the parent who has that final decision making authority would get to choose the school if that were the issue that's um, being debated at the time. So anyway, those are the three options that they have. But a lot of times people don't really understand what issues fall under legal decision making and which ones don't. For example, day-to-day decisions are not part of legal decision making. So if you have the children based on your parenting time schedule, legal decision making doesn't affect specifically what time you get them up or what time they go to bed or exactly what their daytime routines are when they're in your care. It doesn't involve um, what food they're going to eat and just the day-to-day decisions that you make when you have your children. That's not part of it. It's not like someone who has sole legal decision-making authority gets to tell the other parent when they have the children, this is the schedule you have to follow. This is the diet that they have to follow and things like that. Unless there's unless there's special needs when it comes to medical issues and specific diet because of that could be different. But just in general, having sole decision-making authority doesn't mean you get to dictate to the other parent exactly what kind of routine that you have to follow. It also doesn't preclude anybody from getting emergency medical care if it's needed. So if one parent has sole legal decision-making authority or specifically for medical care, that doesn't mean that the other parent can't authorize emergency or urgent care when needed. They would need to notify the other parent, of course, as always, about what's going on. But any parent can get emergency care when needed. It also doesn't give sole decision making authority, also does not give that parent the authority to alter the parenting schedule or cancel the other parent's parenting time. So a lot of times people think, hey, I have sole legal decision making authority. That means whatever schedule we have for parenting time is discretionary. It's up to me. And that's just not the case. They're separate issues, and the parenting time schedule has to be followed regardless of the decision making orders that you have in place. So there's a lot of other things that aren't really affected by legal decision making as well. But some of the things that do come up frequently um, that cause a lot of disputes, and some of them it's actually hard to believe how many disputes these things can cause. But one question would be phones. So at what age are your children going to have a phone or other electronic devices? And is the other parent going to be able to contact them directly through those devices, or do they need to go through the parents, like when they want to call or something? And with really young children, it's fairly easy because they typically don't have phones and these types of devices. With teenagers, most of them do, but there's kind of that in between, like when are the children going to have a phone, and is it just going to be if the parents can't agree on that, are they only going to have a parent when they're with one in one home and not the other, and it causes a lot of disputes if you can't get on board with that. So if I could recommend anything to parents in that situation, is try to work together to come to agreements, because you'll save yourself a lot of grief um, when you have um, a kid or children with different rules in different homes when it comes to that. So if you can get on board and be consistent with that, it's going to make things much easier. Um, and another thing is haircuts. Um, you might be surprised how often this comes up as a dispute in family court, where one parent wants a haircut and the other parent doesn't, and they just go ahead and do it. Or obviously the one who wants to get it done ends up doing it, and the other parent is upset. And especially if it's an extreme type of haircut. So that comes up frequently. Another thing about this is more for older children, but driver's license. That's something that the parents need to be on board as well when their kids start being able to drive, and who's going to cover them on insurance and things like that. Those are disputes that come up sometimes. Something that's not extremely common, but when it does come up, it can be a really big deal, and sometimes you have to go to the judge and get help with it, is travel. So typically, in most co-parenting situations, at least for Arizona parenting plans that I see, usually if you're going to travel out of state during your parenting time, you just need to give notice to the other parent where you're going, where you're going to be, etc. And you don't really have to get permission, because it's not really good to have the other parent have veto authority on where you're going to go during your time with your children. But you still have to give notice. But when you want to travel out of country, you normally have to get either consent of the other parent or a court order authorizing it. And so sometimes, for whatever reason, one parent doesn't want to give that consent. And it may be legit, but it may be unreasonable. But either way, you have to go to a judge and have a judge make that decision, unfortunately, if you can't come to that or come to an agreement on your own. And so that doesn't really fall within legal decision making either, because if you have sole decision making authority, that doesn't just give you the ability to travel to another country without consent or court order. So anyway, that's another area where it doesn't apply. Another thing that causes an insane amount of disputes in family court, like you wouldn't believe how often this happens, is that one parent just will not share information about the medical insurance that they have for the children with the other parent. So basically, one parent is covering the children for health insurance, and they won't give that information to the other parent. So they won't give them a copy of the insurance card or any other information. And you can imagine that creates a lot of problems. I don't know why this is such an issue. I'm sure that it's mostly an emotional issue that manifests itself as something else. So the parent who won't give that information always has an excuse, always has a reason why. But obviously it's an emotional issue, and it's something more going on, because there's really no situation where that information shouldn't be shared freely between the parents. Anyway, that comes up a lot and causes a lot of problems. Another thing that comes up frequently is having other people transport your kids between exchanges. So let's say you're working, or for whatever reason you can't take the kids to meet up with the other parent, or to the other home, or maybe it's at the neutral location, whatever it is. So you have a parent or a sibling, or and this is one that really causes the problems, a boyfriend or girlfriend, or your wife, your future, this is obviously not when you're first breaking up, but sometime down the road, your wife or your husband taking the children instead of you. And so you might be able to imagine how this creates a lot of problems, but you wouldn't you wouldn't believe how many problems this creates for some couples, where let's say the mother is working and she has her boyfriend take the kids, and the father sees this boyfriend bringing his kids, and he just loses it. And likewise, sometimes the father is can't take his kids, and so he gets his new girlfriend to take the kids to the mother, and the mother just does not like the idea that her children are being watched by the father's new girlfriend. And so this creates a lot of problems, but it's sometimes necessary. And it's one of those things that if you go and complain about that to the judge is going to say, okay, well, was there a problem? Were the children mistreated? Because otherwise I don't see an issue. And so it's just one of those things, most of the time you're just going to have to get over it. Now, if somebody is inappropriate around the children, if they have a bad criminal history or whatever specific reasons there may be a legitimate reason to complain about that to a judge. But generally, a judge is going to be like, well, people have to work, they have to do things, and if they can get help taking the children, then that's a good thing. And if there's not a problem, we're not going to deal with it. The court's not going to get involved in that kind of detail in your life. That's not really something that falls under the legal decision making at all. So basically, it creates a lot of problems and a lot of animosity, but the courts aren't going to do anything about it other than say, get over it for the most part. So another thing that people do all the time, and this is relevant to legal decision making, is for the parent who signs up a child or enrolls a child at a school will sometimes not put the other parent's information down. So when the other parent tries to get information from school, the school's like, well, we don't recognize you as a parent. And I could do an entire video on this, and I probably should, but you can imagine this creates all kinds of problems. And so these are some of the things that we go to court on a lot. And when it comes to cases that involve legal decision making, these are a lot of the issues that get brought up before judges. And this video is mostly for informational purposes, but if there were anything that I were going to say about what I would do, is if it were me, I would just be reasonable in all of these different scenarios that I've talked about and any other ones. Because when you get in front of a judge, you want the judge to see that you're a reasonable parent, that you're the one who is co-parenting effectively and trying to involve the other parent and trying to do a good job of doing it together. Because when the judge sees evidence that one parent is not being cooperative on all these different types of things that I'm talking about, not giving the other parent access to the school, causing problems when exchanging the children, doing things behind the other parent's back without talking about it, just generally making things difficult, it's a very good chance that you're going to end up losing your right to be involved in making decisions, and the other parent's going to have the sole decision-making authority going forward. So anyway, every situation is unique, so it's impossible to say exactly what would work for everyone, but you just want to be reasonable when it comes to these things. And if you think of any others, feel free to let me know, or if you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to reply. And if you want to talk about this, you can always call my office and we can schedule an actual consultation where we can talk about your specific situation as well. So give us a call if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help. Thanks.